Thank you, everyone. Firstly, thank you to Father Rigo for hosting us and being a partner for this conclave. And in equal part, thanks to Sugata, because as Father rightly said, we've been at the Guild when we've been thinking about organizing programs outside of Delhi. And Sugata recommended that the St. Joseph's University in Bangalore would be an ideal place in Bangalore to organize a conclave like this. For all the right reasons, for the program it runs, for the legacy that the institution holds, and for the all the wherewithal that a university institution like this can bring together. So my thanks to Sugata for stitching this up, and of course to Father and his colleagues who've been working for the last few months very proactively in putting this program together. I must also thank my own colleagues at the Guild, the office bearers who were not here, the programs committee, and one of our members, Akar, who should be here soon, because they all have been working very closely over the last few months to put this program together. Now, Father is, of course, you all know about the history of St. Joseph's University. I think it sort of falls upon me to share a bit about what the Guild is. And there are far more senior people who can talk more about what the Guild's history has been, people who have been been past presidents of Guild. Raj Chingappa is the past president. Mr. K.N. Harikumar, who will be joining us shortly, also has been a past president. And since I presume most of you here are either students of journalism or have an interest in journalism or definitely are in some field of study which intersects with politics, with policy, with journalism, or just are a curious person about what is going on with the country. And in this place, what is Editors Guild and the role it plays, what's the history been, and why this conference? So Guild is a body which was established in 1978. It's an association of senior editors across the country, from print, from broadcast, from digital. It, of course, started as an association of all the senior editors of that time, 1978, right after the emergency years, when it was very evident that journalists need to organize themselves against any kind of state action. There were bodies like the INS, the Indian Newspaper Society, which was more of a publisher's body. And the thinking of the founders at that time, Mr. Kuldeep Nayyar, Mr. Ramoji Rao, and various other Nikhil Chakrabarti, that the editors need to have their own body, which is free of any kind of influence of the organizations that they are part of. Because organizations also have to work with certain kind of compulsions, certain restrictions, and a lot of practicalities which probably will be at the heart of what we're also going to touch upon later in the day. But editors need to sort of organize themselves more strongly, more cohesively, to fight for the rights of journalists, to fight for the rights of freedom of expression. And that's the genesis of the Guild since 1978. And over the last, about 45 years now, the Guild has been probably the tallest voice of journalists in the country. It has waged battles consistently with governments of that time to protect the space for freedom of speech. One of the earliest known instances which I have been told about is the criminal defamation case in 1988 or 87, around that time, late 80s, when Rajiv Gandhi's government at that time had passed a bill, a very strongly designed bill on defamation. And the Guild organized itself. There were marches down the Parliament street. And that was the time when I think editors, publishers all came together. And within a matter of few days, if I'm right, the bill was withdrawn. And that was the power of collective action. I think the Guild, the whole idea was that whilst individually we might have certain compulsions, we might have certain restrictions, but when we come together, we can fight for a greater cause. And that's what Guild has been doing all throughout. The idea of these conclaves was that the Guild, for whatever reason, because Delhi ends up being the center of political journalism in the country. So Guild was always seen as a body which was very Delhi focused. And I mean, that's a natural outcome. The national capital is there, the political seat of the government, central government is there. But there's been a long call from most of our members and of course the fraternity as well, that the Guild, whatever work we are doing, needs to sort of go out. We need to reach out to cities and places across the country. So that's how we thought of these ideas of organizing regional conclaves. We'd organized one in Orissa a month and a half ago, and this is the second edition that we have done. as part of this effort to take the guild's work towards the larger audience. And today's conference, I mean, we're a city of Bangalore, so obviously we thought what would be the way to sort of give a framing to it, and nothing better than tech and the challenges that journalism is facing on the technological front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down the entire landscape of what we're going to discuss today. I'm going to lay down what the problems we are facing, the solutions. We are all trying to find solutions. I don't think so. We all have solutions to all the problems. It's a work in progress. As somebody, I think the Washington Post journal, a publisher said that journalism is the first rough draft of history. It's always a rough draft. So whatever we were working is still work in progress. We never reach the final conclusion, but we keep on aiming towards finding a solution. And in a city like Bangalore, where of course the center of the tech revolution and the greatest challenge that has been thrown at journalism, of course, there's a challenge from the state. There's always been a challenge from the state, and I think one must also pinpoint that the challenge from the state, because our memories are sometimes very, we have a problem of amnesia. We can say that the problems of the state in the last 5 or 8 years. No, that's not the case. The problems from the state has always been there. I mean, we just talked about the criminal defamation case. There have been many other instances where governments across political lines have tried to sort of encroach upon the space after the constitution guaranteed a certain set of rights. After that monumental piece of work came together, there have been enough and more attempts by the state itself to encroach upon that space. So that being the primary challenge, the other big challenge that has come up in the last 10 years is in the digital space, and how the platforms, how the shift to digital has disrupted the entire way journalism is produced, the way journalism is consumed, and I guess also the way journalism is served, because we are now no longer in the complete control of the channels of distribution. Those channels of distribution now are being owned by a very few select organizations, and the disproportionate influence they play in the way content is served to you. You all know about algorithms and AI ML tools that are coming in. There is the challenge of what is being served to you based on their algorithms, and now AI has come in, which is not even letting you go to the original source. You go to a Google search and you type, Siddaramaiah and some policy, and before you come to the news source, Google itself, Google AI will summarize it to you. And for vast majority of people, that is enough. Whether the summarization is correct or not correct, whether it's based on authentic research or not, that summarization is enough and they will move on. As a result, the relationship between the reader and the publisher and the original news content creator has gotten broken. And we've become sort of prisoners to what these 3 or 4 corporations, literally it's come down to those 3 or 4 corporations are determining on what is being served. So as a result, I think, this has become a far greater challenge for us to grapple with. So as I see it, there are 5 challenges that journalism today is operating within. Of course, there's state action. There are laws. New laws have been introduced. Our first speaker is Dr. Sudhir Krishnaswamy, the Vice Chancellor of NLS, and he'll speak far more extensively and far more authoritatively on the way legal environment in the country has come up, right from the genesis of the Constitution. And I say the genesis because my own pet peeve is that the governments have used a very sort of an Achilles foot kind of a weakness in our Constitution. For those who are familiar with the document, 19.1 gives you freedom of speech. And there's nothing called freedom of press, by the way. There's freedom of speech. And freedom of press is subsumed within freedom of speech. Everybody has the same right to speech and expression. And 19.2 gives you a set of restrictions that the governments can enforce from time to time. There are 9 restrictions or 8 restrictions: obscenity, morality, contempt, public order, security of state, friendly relations with neighboring states. Some of those restrictions were actually added as part of the First Amendment to the Constitution. And the irony between us, just as a reference, is whereas the US First Amendment guaranteed absolute freedom of speech, our First Amendment expanded the restrictions to freedom of speech. So that genesis has, whatever may have been the intentions behind those restrictions, have now found space across a wide mix of civil and criminal laws. over the last 80 years to give a handle to a government agency, to an investigative agency, to a police officer, because the criminal laws, all the restrictions on freedom of speech that criminal laws have, the erstwhile IPC and the new Bharat Nyaya Samhita, they are all rooted on those 8 or 9 restrictions. Now those restrictions have been expanded, they found space in newer laws, the new criminal laws, the new IT laws, the new law, the new broadcast bill that the government has been trying to push. There is a talk of a larger digital India law. These restrictions have found a space in all of them, and as a result, the space for us as a journalist or a media organization, or anyone as an individual content creator, whether on YouTube or Twitter, has come under purview of one or the other laws. And the problem is it's not one law, it is multiple laws. And so the state can sort of choose, they have a menu, which law they want to apply to you today, or they want to apply to you more than one law. So anyway, I won't elaborate on that more because Sudhir will be speaking on that. So whilst that is, of course, one of the paramount problems we are facing with, the other big problem that generally journalism, I feel, has to grapple with is also the challenge of nationalism. And again, I would like to sort of couch the word nationalism in a not a very restrictive sense, but nationalism in the sense that, I think of Benedict Anderson, some of you have read Nation, and what is a nation? A nation is an imagined community. And he came up with a theory he came up with his analysis that nationalism and media always goes hand in hand. Because for nationalism to take place, it has to be on the basis of a common mass media that a group of people are reading. That nationalism can be language, that nationalism can be region, that nationalism can be ethnicity, and nationalism can be religion. And media has always had this sort of a quid pro quo, but always also an antagonistic relationship with nationalism, because media gives birth to nationalism and vice versa. We are sitting in Bangalore, we're sitting in southern part of the country. We all know southern newspapers. If you go into the history of the print newspapers, the southern newspapers were the one that became far more widely read before the northern Indian newspapers were widely read. And that was, one of the theories that was because it was in response to the regional nationalism of that time against the hegemony of, a perceived hegemony of Delhi, or of, the threat that Hindi might be forced upon the entire country. So whether it's Tamil papers, it's Kannada papers, there is Telugu papers, they all grew in circulation in 1960s and 70s, far before actually the Hindi papers reached that monumental height. So media has always gone hand in hand with nationalism, and it becomes therefore a responsibility to also be aware of, are we being a project of that nationalism, or are we trying to control that nationalism? And I'm again not going to restrict to what's going on right now, because I think it's convenient for us to say that every problem in media is a product of last 5 to 8 years. No, it's a perennial problem. The third one, of course, is the third challenge is on the business model. There was a time when media was extremely profitable by its own, but in the last 20, 30 years, media has become so dependent on A, government advertising, B, the model itself has failed with digital, shift to digital. Now, at a time when publishers or media or creators are not able to generate revenues from the end consumer, who's the reader, because the news being produced for them, when they're not able to generate enough revenues from the reader, and government becomes the major revenue source, how does any objective journalism take place? And this is a problem which is again sort of built over the last, I don't know, I think Raj and Mr. Jagannathan will probably tell more, but was this a problem in 1980s as much as it is today? But definitely today, it is a far bigger problem than it was. Or Sugata might probably be a better place to say. At least one gets a feeling, one gets a sense that this problem has become bigger and bigger because no state government wants to cut down on your advertising. In fact, they want to use that advertising to their advantage. And the problem is deeper, in fact, more in the state than in the national arena, because in the national arena, you're still, your messaging is across the country. Whereas in the state, a local newspaper becomes so heavily dependent on the state government for advertising that the opportunity of any objective journalism is just not possible. Even for a well-meaning publisher and editor, the practicalities of every day bringing out a newspaper and paying salaries of your employees is such a great burden that true journalism ends up taking a backseat. Now, again, this is one of those problems which doesn't have a solution, easy solution. One can simplify and say that, yes, the easy solution is all newspapers increase the cover price from what 5 rupees to 20 rupees, and we expect all the readers to pay for that. I mean, that will solve the problem. But it's obviously, we know it's not that easy. I mean, it requires, it won't happen, and thanks to Sukata, your earlier company, Times of India, that's never going to happen with Mr. Sameer Jain having this, the invitation pricing that they started in 1990s and crashed the pricing of newspapers. So and that problem has gotten compounded because whilst as it is you're dependent on government advertising, you're competing with the digital space where content is supposed to be free. And now, even though most of us are actually bringing our content behind paywall, you will see slowly most papers have moved to some kind of a paywall. Right when we did a collective action that, okay, folks, we need to gather together. News is valuable. Customers need to pay for news. There comes these AI ML models, which are crawling through your content, even the one behind your paywall, crawling through your content without your permission, not paying you license fee, training their models on your content. I mean, there's vast amount of libraries, archives that Times of India, Express, Hindu, India Today, all the major newspapers, the Kannada papers, language papers, vast amount of archives which we have put online because we want to reach the audience. Now it's available. Now these AI ML models are crawling through that content, training their machines, and then summarizing content and serving to readers free of cost. And if vast majority of readers will remain restricted to that free content, the chances of us paying for our content goes for a further toss. So this business model of media, goes for a bigger toss, gets compounded. And then within that, a subset of that is the problems that independent media has been facing. We all know that over the last 5 to 8 years, many initiatives have been taken to create independent media organizations. There's a panel today on, again, Bangalore is a city of tech and startups. We thought it will deem fit to have a session on what it takes to create a truly independent media organization. Now there, of course, for them the problem is that they're not, if you're independent, which means that you're supposed to question the government, you don't get the government largesse. And then finally, of course, it all boils down to our own question of ethics as to how deeply can publishers, editors follow an ethical anchor, given the problem of the threat of government action under one of the many laws, criminal, civil, IT, that's a problem. The problem of the danger of government taking away advertising if you're critical of them. The problem of controlling your own bias, your own nationalism bias. We all come with a national bias. It could be caste bias, it could be regional, your own bias. The challenge of digital. And within that, we have to find a way to remain true to our ethical model. So I might, I don't want to sound very despondent also, because this might sort of give an impression that all is sort of skeptical in the days to look. It's not. Believe me, it's not. It's actually, while these problems are there at the meta level, not at the metaverse, but at the meta level, the solutions are also there. And there are good, demonstrable solutions, not just within our own country, but of course the world at large. Independent media is thriving. You have the playground has shifted to also include independent content creators. You all follow, whether it's Ravish or Dhruv Rathi or Akash Banerjee, and I'm sure there are similar voices in Kannada. They fill that space, and that's fine. That's good to have these voices because this keeps the ecosystem in balance. Because if the legacy media, for all these reasons, is not able to serve this content as freely, then the challenge comes from the independent creators. And I remain optimistic that what we see is a cycle. We are seeing a cycle. A balance has to come in. The industry is organizing itself against big tech in a very aggressive manner. There was a time when we allowed the big tech to create the rules of engagement. But now there's a much greater consciousness, and there's a much greater dialogue happening, much greater efforts being there. There are examples for those who follow the global scene, there are examples in Australia, there are examples in Europe, where big tech has been reined in. They've been asked to share revenues, they've been asked to share far greater sort of share of the pie to publishers, to news creators, and this battle will continue. And that's what we need to do. There is, in fact, it might be too technical, but the Competition Commission of India has also instituted a sort of inquiry as to how to sort of work with the big tech, Google and Facebook of the world, and they're reining in. We have to fight, and that's what the underlying message from us at the Guild is, that collective action can help you mount over these problems. We can be either despondent that everything is going down, or we can look at examples from any other media. I mean, there's a time when people said the cinema is going down because you have Netflix and Amazon at home, but lo and behold, there is the turnout at cinema and is breaking record. There was a time when people said that now that YouTube is there, who will ever go for a great concert? But I believe there was a big concert yesterday, Diljit Dosanjh. I was told some 2.5 lakh people came there. And if I'm right, the concert was so big that at some point, the singer said that let everybody who's outside the arena also come in. So it was overrun by people. So at the end, people want authenticity. People want that touch. And we know about Taylor Swift's record-breaking $1 billion tour. Who would have thought that 5 years ago or 8 years ago when, we said that music was all Spotify and music was all Saavn and JioSaavn and only YouTube. No, new mediums come, they give a challenge to an old medium. Governments come, they throw a challenge at publishers. Tech is coming, they're throwing challenge at us. But an equilibrium has to come because we all do crave for authenticity at the end of the day. Today, how many of us will take anything on face value as we get in WhatsApp? There was a time 10 years ago we will take it on face value. Today we are not. Today we want to find out, okay, what is the source? Today, soon enough, when AI ML is, as it becomes more pervasive, this question of what is the source of it is going to come up. New York Times has filed a case against OpenAI to challenge them to sort of, share, cite them for their output, but also share the revenues. So these fights are going on. And at the Guild itself, we've had some successes. You might have heard of this effort by the government, by the central government, to put together a fact-checking unit last year, where the government would have been the sole arbiter of what is fake or misleading about it. The Guild challenged that unit, and the Bombay High Court has ruled against it. Held it constitutionally invalid. So these battles are won. The broadcast bill was introduced earlier this year. The Guild and many other organizations, DigiPub and so on and so forth, put up a great protest, and the government has backed out. So there is always hope in collective action, and that's what we all need to sort of come up with. You're all going to be entering the field in the next year or two. The road is not easy, but road is not completely despondent of any hope. We collectively organize ourselves. The equilibrium will come back. The tide will come back, and that's what the message of the Guild is. All right, I think I've spoken enough, and I have a small secret. I've been speaking here because the first speaker is yet about to come, so I've been trying to fill the airwave. Just give us a minute or two. Raj, can I call you in to fill in for the next 5 minutes? I don't think I can do that. But thank you all for coming in. Okay.
Maybe we should ask them, you got any,
Yeah, I think maybe we can have a interactive session right before.
all good journalists.
Song? I don't know. Hello? Sorry, I realized how bad Bangalore traffic is. Yesterday it took me 1 hour, 15 minutes to come from airport to here. So our first speaker has just messaged me that he's also stuck in one of the traffic.
No, I was just saying that all good journalists, the first thing you have to do is ask the question, right? That's the lesson that we all learned. So you can ask a question. Do you remember, any of you all saw Matrix, or that's my generation only? What's all? What did Trinity tell Neo? Or Neo, sorry. Anyone remember? No one saw it? I thought all these retro films are coming back like Hindi. She said, it's the question. And then that whole revelation happened. So anyone's got questions? Anyone, just stand up. Doesn't matter if you look like a fool for 30 seconds. That's how journalists always are. There, okay. Shout, shout.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. It's actually a pleasure to be here in front of such esteemed journalists. So I have a lot of questions which I will ask in the further.
One question.
Ask one.
Yeah, for now I'll ask only one basic question. So I was just seeing the poster and stuff. So you see all the editors of all the major media houses. I rarely see any women journalists in the management level. Why do you think is the reason for that?
I think they've been. Anant, you can answer, you are the publisher as well, but there's been tremendous amount of women journalists. Maybe you're not noticing them. In my own organization, our executive editor is Manisha Swaroop, who's a journalist. We've got about 5 women journalists. In fact, they probably outnumber us in terms of thing. I don't know which. And if you look at the digital space, there are a hell of a lot of women journalists. So I think the gender issue at one time was an issue when I was a young reporter, which you are all going to enter into. But they have done fantastically well. They're as equal as we are. As we see in the space department, they do the rockets. Our journalists also, women journalists also do fantastic stories. So we've never thought of gender in the newsroom as an issue. Let's put it very frankly. But yeah, maybe there's some organizations.
I think at the mid level, or within the organization, mid and the young level, I think you would see most newsrooms to be quite gender balanced now. Of course, I'm much younger. I've seen the newsroom for the last 12 years, 13 years. I don't know what it was 30 years ago, but as the mid and definitely the starting in the mid and somewhere in the senior mid is very, very gender balanced. But yes, I mean, at the really top, I think there is still more scope for it. We hope that, that mid as it sort of goes up the rank, will get more evened out. I think the bigger problem, if we were to look at the inequalities more than gender, is I would say the caste ethnic breakup of newsrooms. I think that's where, especially I'm talking about the northern Indian newsroom, maybe southern Indian newsrooms are slightly more, I don't know actually, but that's the lens that we need to work on, and generally also to ensure that the newsrooms are a microcosm of what the country is. From a caste angle, from ethnicity angle, from a regional angle, because the more diversity you bring into newsrooms, the more balanced will it be, the more inclusive will it be, because then it's not one perspective, one person's perspective or one small clique's perspective. I think that's somewhere that, there is scope, and again, it's changing. I think, we are seeing it's becoming more and more inclusive, but there is some more distance to be traveled there.
But I hope you're not getting into the reservations issue.
No, not at all.
But, just to continue with your question, if you look at some of the women journalists that have done, Barka Dutt, who covered Kargil and a whole lot of major items, she was top on the list. Jaggi's here he was an outstanding business journalist, but he would also say, the people, if you see Shireen
She's being led by Jyoti Malhotra.
She's head of the Tribune, my former paper where I was editor-in-chief, now headed by a woman, Jyoti Malhotra, who's an ex-colleague of mine. So you've got a range. So therefore, I don't think gender is a barrier. Nor do I think, in many senses, the caste is in terms of this thing. Because we find, I never ask anyone which part of either the country or the caste you belong to. I look for people, the fundamentals of good journalism, right? You need to have curiosity. That's the first thing of a journalist, is to have that. So I'm not asking which caste you are, where you come, the way you speak, or anything else. If I'm looking for a journalist, the first thing I want to know is awareness levels. The journalist has to be current, topical, so you should be, if you're not reading newspapers or television, look at what's happening across you and react to it. So you have to be like a little child all over again, right? Where everything should strike you as curious. If I come into this building, I must be saying, let me look at it and see. And therefore, those are the fundamental qualities that we look for when we are there. Curiosity, passion, commitment, excitement. You're entering into a tremendously exciting field. So, as I said, none of these matter as much as yourself and your interest in what you want to do. And you'll find that you think you're in university, journalism is a continuing university. Right? Every day you're learning something. And what happens is you have the best teachers. You have the right to call up anyone across in any subject that you want, including your famous film stars. If you want to call up, who's the latest, Allu Arjun, Pushpa 2, you can call and say, look, I want an interview with you. That's the excitement you have. So these are issues, of course, I'm not saying they're not issues, but for you all should look at where you come from, your passion, what you're interested in, why you're here. If you're not interested, don't be here. This is not a punishment, right? Journalism has to be more than just, I want a good job, a good salary. I want the excitement. I want to be, as you had said earlier, the first draft is history. You want to be in the ringside, we call it the ringside seat of history. That's what we are. We witness it as it happens. We're talking about it, and now with instant journalism, you're doing even more. You're reporting as it happens. We sort of had a little relaxed sort of this thing, but I'm talking too much. Any other question? Yeah.
Before we head to the next question, requesting the participants who have questions to come forward or close to the stage.
Not a bad idea.
Tech team, please help the participants with a mic. Thank you.
I think we got a mic, roving mic. Yeah, please give your name and which this thing. That'll be great. You know, you guys are pretty good, huh? Those guys who announced. I was a journalism student. Very impressed that you actually came out and spoke and welcomed the guests. So let's give those people and anyone out here a very good big round of applause. Thanks for organizing this. Outside I saw students welcoming me and, really making us feel this thing. Father, all credit to you and this. That's what we love, is that kind of thing. And this is how you learn. I will be very nervous to ask a question, but you go ahead and do it.
Good morning, sir. Thank you. So, myself Ananya, and I'm from the third shift. I'm a journalism student. So, I'm very passionate and I really have interest about journalism. So, my question to you is, which is the best way for learning journalism for students? Like whether it is practical or like how people can get interest in learning journalism. So that takes or anything like that.
I think partly I answered that question in the sense that you have to be, while classroom is good, okay, it gives you a structure, it allows you to understand why we are in the business, it gives you a certain skill level, but it has to be, you have to improve on it, train on it. No one is an outstanding writer, journalist from the day one. Could be 1 in a million, 2 in a million. Who have the talents? Guys like us, we sweat, right? We have to keep at it. We have to keep practicing our writing. We have to keep practicing our talking, the way we look at this thing. And today you have all the instruments to do that without having to feel shy. You can sit at home, put a video, and speak into it, and really master it, right? The other thing, as I said, is journalism is not rocket science. Okay, so if you walk on the streets today, you go at home, and if the prices of, say, your bread goes up, just a loaf of bread, your mom says go and buy a bread, or your dad says, I don't know, these days who says, I guess you all don't buy it anyway. You all don't listen to your mom and pops, right? But suppose you had to go and buy a bread yourself. And the first thing you notice is that the price has gone up from, say, how much is it now, 100 rupees to 120 rupees, right? That is the, you must ask why. Why am I paying so much more? Journalism begins at home, like charity itself, but journalism actually begins as you walk on the streets, as you see a drain that is open. Now, if you're a civic journalist, you ask why, right? Why is this open? And once you go into it, you'll find a tremendous story. We don't want to, one of the things I think of virtual journalism is we don't do real journalism. Just go out there, meet the person, chat, you're very happy, call on the phone, you lose a lot. Okay, because when you talk to me, as say I came on a Zoom, vastly different things happen, body language, understanding the environment, things. So that is the skill level you need to work on. It's not skill, it's just, you breathe air, right? It's like that. There's nothing special, you just have to be curious. Why is this happening? I must be like that, like little children. You know, you ask your niece or whatever, you see the shadow and they ask why. Why does the shadow come in? The whole process of understanding. And one thing is great in this is, you've got a tremendous amount of information you can learn very quickly. We'll come to that later, but Anant, you might want to add anything.
I think you've sort of answered it. We'll take one more question.
Are the colleagues coming?
Yeah, he's just coming.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, he's outstanding. You must listen to Sudhir. Sudhir is coming. One of the best law.
One more question.
Yeah.
Sir, a very good morning. Today, how much media responsibility have towards the mitigation of climate change crisis? And what are the challenges and threat media people will be having, especially from some projects may be taken from the government side, which may be harmful to ecology or other things, or most of them from business like mining or enrichment of forests or lakes. This is very common. Only we could see the end effect which we are all facing even in Bangalore or major like Delhi, air quality or whatever Chennai, the floods, that will become headlines. But the mitigations, it will be always not much taking the prime this one.
No, I think you want to say?
No, go ahead.
No, I
No,
thought
I
dominating
think,
the discussion.
this is the problem of, let's say, finding a way to sort of report on a certain issue, which is very important, almost existential, but in a way that it also catches the attention of the reader. Now, climate, for example. The moment pollution level hits, AQI hits 500, all Delhi newspapers are full of it, right? But rest of the year, there is hardly any reportage. That's not because we don't want to report. Because we also know that if you were to report, there are 10 other things that you can report further on. And again, in a day where your front page is not where news is being consumed, it's on your, your Google, on your news alerts. You're competing for your attention between literally a billion other distractions. And priority always ends up going on a news event, which is for whatever reason, is more gimmicky or more eye-catching. Not gimmicky, but actually, might have a greater appetite at that time. So that somewhere there, some of these existential topics, in my view, end up taking a sort of being relegated to the back, get upstaged. The other thing is solutions. I mean, I guess the primary duty of journalists is to pinpoint to the problem. We're not there in solutions game. And sure, you can say that, you're taking the easy way out by just pointing at the problem and saying, okay, somebody else finds solution. But that's the first thing. That's what the primary responsibility is, to pinpoint the problem, bring the awareness. Solution, of course, is, that's why you have a government, that's why you have various other organizations which are dedicated towards that. Our job is to bring it to fore. There again, the problem of bringing it to fore gets sort of, subsumed with 10 other factors. And again, when the crisis becomes a crisis, that's when people want to read more about it, not when the crisis is not a crisis yet.
Well, I'll just add to what Anand said. I think it's a very good question to really pose. And for a lot of y'all who are just starting, climate change, environment is the biggest issue, right? When I was started my career, I started here with City Tab, which is a little paper that we all started with my professor. One of the first stories I wrote about was disastrous pollution in Bangalore and how there is no sewage treatment plant for all the sewage that we generate. And that time I wrote about Delundu. Just this morning, if you open the Deccan Herald, if you read it, they were talking, I think, of Tippakondahalli. That's the other place where a lot of the sewage flows. And precisely, if you just roll back 40 years, exactly what I wrote that time is now there. So some of these issues are very close to our heart. You can feel, smell, breathe, hear pollution. So, this generation, I feel, is very, very concerned about the atmosphere and what's happening. So it's a very rich area in terms of actually reporting. Many people are interested in what is it. And as Anant was saying, there's a lot of solution oriented. So one is a problem. You need to raise it as a problem. If Tippakondahalli is polluting the people around and their diseases being caused because of it, it's just not sewage going in, but people are drinking that water, people are living, mosquitoes are there, you get dengue, you get all these other diseases. So it's a citizen concern. Second is, who's doing anything about it? That's where the journalists in all of us come, which is to ask, who the hell is supposed to stop this with? Sorry to use a swear word, but that's the way journalists should ask. You must have the indignation to say, why isn't this being fixed? So who's responsible? So you go after that. And in that responsibility, you also look at the solution. So what does it cost? Why is it being delayed? Is there corruption? In each of these things, you will find a tremendous story. Just to give you an example, when I was a reporter like you, doing the streets of Bangalore, one of the things that happened was Bangalore was considered the garden city, but when I was there, it was the garbage city. So I actually went around chasing garbage trucks to find out why isn't the garbage being cleaned. And one of the most interesting things happened when I did that is that just not far from here was where the entire, what they call the yard of all the trucks, garbage trucks that were there. And I noticed a very peculiar thing, that there was a demand for diesel versus petrol, and petrol was higher, for some reason more of these drivers wanted petrol-driven vehicles. And then when I stopped and checked and kept talking, it came to this, that what they would do is never actually take the trucks out. They would go outside, and those days you could spin that odometer. They would then say, we went these many kilometers, actually take the petrol and diesel and sell it. So it became a huge story from a simple thought that we exposed the corruption that was there, and this is what they were doing. So there are a lot of things that you just keep your eyes open, not just in this. Sorry, my voice faded. But that's the way to do it, is to keep asking the question, find out there's a system that works. Why isn't your roads being swept? Who's in charge? Next step, who's supposed to collect your garbage? After that, where does the garbage go? Who disposes that? We just are great guys, we'll generate garbage, we're not worried where it goes, we generate sewage, we're not worried where it goes. Journalists should do that, and that's climate change. That's reporting, right? In that indirect way, you're contributing to the change that is there. So don't think climate change is just the big issue, overheating. What is that doing in micro units within us? That's my view. Sudhir is here. Perfectly timed, Sudhir.
So, welcome Sudhir. We were just talking about Bangalore and its woes, and besides climate and the lakes, I think the traffic is the other existential crisis that you guys are living in. I can just say that, the amount of time it's and so take away, if one was to calculate amount of time you're sort of spending on traffic and what's the hazard around it, I'm sure it will be nothing short of Delhi's AQI of 500. First of all, if everybody can welcome Sudhir, Dr. Sudhir Kishorswamy, Vice Chancellor, National Law School of India, National Law School, University of India. I'm just going to lay the context again relay the context for Sudhir's benefit, and also for him to catch a breath, because he's been on the road for a while as well. And Sudhir, as you know, today's conference is all about digital journalism as a crossroad, digital crossroads, the kind of challenges we are facing, and two of the challenges that we are grappling most, actively are, of course, the legal challenges, the legal environment within which journalism is operating, and the challenges being thrown on the tech side by the digital platforms, and the way the government is also regulating digital platforms. So we'd love to hear your views on how journalism, how speech, the space around it, what is obviously guaranteed to us by Constitution. We've already touched upon the restrictions that the Constitution also allows, and how the government and the platforms are sort of, creating a space within which them as future journalists have to sort of work within. So Sudhir, I again welcome you. Thank you again. And just to sort of give you there's a subsequent sessions right after Sudhir. There will be a session by Mr. Krishna Beregowda. So we'll hear the professor's viewpoint. We'll also hear the government viewpoint on some of it. All right, Sudhir, the stage is yours. Thank you.